getting my head around how to do this. So if you can see my slide, I'm just going to take us through that and just go with the flow on that. So some of the global risk. I wanted to start here, but I'm going to talk about Ubuntu Intelligence, and then understanding what Ubuntu is. But I'm going to start a little bit just positioning this where we are in light of what we just experienced recently with Glasgow and COP26, saying what are the major global risks that we face. And we've seen extreme weather, we've seen infectious disease and all that. And the common thread in all of these top risks by likelihood and top risk by impact is the human factor. It comes down to who we are as human beings. And I want to draw our attention to that we need to learn to connect, reconnect, and really it's about learning, unlearning, and relearning, if you like, to be human again. But to be human with an E. To be humane, we need to come back home to who we are. Humane beings, and not the human doings that we're used to. It's really connecting with those ancient values that many people live by now. Increasingly, more and more people are seeing the need and the value to connect, and genuine, authentic connection with our natural, authentic selves that seek and yearn human connection. We've been reminded of that more now, more recently, with the pandemic and lockdowns and that wanting to connect to each other. So one of my key messages here today is conscious connection in the context of these global risks and why we need that more now than ever before. These are the values that Nelson Mandela lived by, and he sought to connect and became friends with his prison guard. For someone who had been in jail for 27 years, to come out and make friends with the person that was guarding you in prison, that takes some doing. But that's an example of how we can be interconnected, humane beings in spite and beyond, and transcending these global risks that we face. They must actually rally us to want to find each other again. When we greet in my language, isiZulu, we say Sawubona. That's in Zulu. We say Sawubona. It's SAWUBONA. And now some of you been to South Africa, see you, Marcia, would know what this means. Sawubona means I see you, and it's the actual greeting. And when you say that to someone, they respond back by saying the same thing, like Sawubona, meaning I see you too. And then when you ask how Gunjani, meaning how are you, or how is it, you say Ngikona, which means I'm here, or I'm present, I'm available. So greetings lay the foundation for human conscious connection. And that's where things start. We need to start with conscious connection at the point of interface, at the point of contact, when we greet each other. So part of what I'm going to talk about is just covers some of this Ubuntu and conscious connection. If we have a chance, I want to break into groups and just do a 5 minutes exercise about consciously connecting and seeing others. But I would most likely leave it, because the numbers here, leave it here, and then we can stay here and engage, and you can ask me any questions you want about that. So what we're doing here is recapping about human connection, because I believe many of us know this. But it's not something we tap into, but it's something we suppress, because we become so pragmatic and so, for lack of a better term, so action-centered. It's all about doing, and we've forgotten the most important part, the being part, which is what I'm talking about. So I'm going to try and plant some seeds and ideas for deeper engagement on what is required as a way of being, what required ways of being we need to work on for us to be consciously interconnected beings, which is our natural state, especially in our fragile environment. So we've got to plant these seeds and work on them together as fellow human beings. So let me visit this greeting thing, because Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence starts really with this thing called greeting. So we must greet. And how must we greet? If I can say hello, bonjour, hola, hi, hello, guten Tag. How do you say it in German? Does that in German? Or in other languages? How do you say hello in Mandarin? I just told you in my language, say Sawubona. It's long, but it I believe is very profound. I was doing some team coaching work in Ethiopia a few years ago, and someone came from the east, from the southern part in the valleys in Ethiopia. And if there's an Ethiopian on the call, please share this. Told me that some of the pastoralists, they move around in different seasons, different parts of the year. When they greet, they say something like, how is it, or what is it like where you just came from? And that's built into the greeting. I mean, how profound is that? It's a checking in about how you are and how it is where you are. And that's really deep connection in that. But we need to, how do we greet? Do we ever pay attention to that? Maybe you bow, maybe you shake a hand. Well, in different conditions, we do greeting differently. What is behind your greeting? What's the intent behind how you greet? Maybe elbow bump. That's another way, or fist pump. Or maybe you do the close embrace, a tight hug. Yeah, kind of miss that if you don't have it. It's a beautiful way to feel the connection. But the message with this slide especially is this. We need to greet consciously. If you take anything from this session, take this one thing. Human beings need to remember to greet consciously, because it ignites the human connection that the world needs more now than ever before. When I grew up running 7 kilometers to school one way, barefoot, I could describe it. I remember it so clearly, that one of the things we were taught is you always greet any and everyone you meet along the way. You may be running and late for school, you still stop and greet an elder or anyone that you meet along the way, because we are connected beings. And if you didn't do that, you will be in trouble immediately or later. Your parents would hear about it and you get disciplined for that. So embodying practices of human connection built into the culture, the engagement. And you go into organizations in other parts of the world and you greet people and they're like, what's wrong with you? What do you want? It is in our very nature to connect like that. We miss that. We need that now more than ever. Part of my work I do, I teach in the diplomatic school in South Africa. And these are diplomats that become ambassadors in that. And part of my lectures in that is understanding different cultures and how they do that. Greeting is an integral part of that, because you are laying foundations for engaging and connecting with others that may be externally different from you, but possibly internally seek the same thing, to get to connect and to know you as you are, beyond the story that they know about you. And this is the work that we need to do. See each other beyond the narratives and beyond the stories that we think we know about each other, which are incomplete. To complete any story about anyone, you've got to connect with them genuinely and authentically where they are. So we need to greet consciously, because greeting consciously is not an accident. It doesn't happen on its own. It starts with a clear intent to genuinely connect because I am genuinely interested in you. And the next thing is probably learn one or two things about you, about your language or your culture in that. Not see people as projects that need to be delivered or achieved. Why? Because as human beings, we are hardwired to connect, not hardwired. We are hardwired to connect to ourselves and each other and to the greater good that we share. So genuine connection helps us unwrap and unleash the gifts in everyone around us. How do you do that? Well, we're coming to the holidays, those that believe in that, and there'll be a lot of gift wrapping and gift unwrapping in the next few weeks and months and that. But for me, and the symbolism in that is that we need to understand that, hold on, the role of leaders and fellow professionals is to help organizations unwrap the gifts that already exist within every single one of your team if you work within a team. Understanding that we need to find the gift beyond the ribbon and the gift wrapping. How? People do not just have gifts. Human beings do not just have gifts. They are gifts to us. Like those of us that have children, they are gifts. And okay, sometimes they put you into trouble from the terrible twos to the adolescents, teenagers, and others. And then they become adults and they appreciate you more. But the gift is always within there. When we meet someone for the first time, and this is the Ubuntu part, all that I'm sharing here is an integral part of Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence. And I'm going to cover it right now, what Ubuntu is. When we meet someone, we're encountering the gift in the wrapping. And sometimes we take off the ribbon or the unwrapping with a greeting like a handshake or hug or those different ways of greeting. And that's where we stop. Most of us stop there. Say in the shared spaces we call organizations where we work. And that's about the end of it until I need something from you to do something. And then some leaders never really open the real gift. They never really get to know the person beyond the role they play along the value chain of what they do in that organization. So there's no genuine connection with the person unless they work closely together. And onboarding and induction processes are not enough to really get to know. So we need to learn to see people as they are and connect with them beyond the story, beyond the CV or profile or resume. How do we do that? We use Ubuntu and connect and engage, understanding that Ubuntu is the genuine, authentic, humane interconnectedness all around us. It means I am because we are, and it means a lot more than that. So Ubuntu starts with seeing each other as we are, not believing and taking the story that you think you know about me, because you see the externalities of how I'm showing up, and that's enough to confirm or affirm a story that is attached to that description or that external appearance. People are more than the external appearance. The old saying about the book and the cover, it's always true. So Ubuntu is not just an African thing. It's a word in Nguni languages. Mandela's language is Xhosa, and my language is Zulu. People always call it Zulu, and Zulu is just a word, but the language is isiZulu. And in my language, it means I am because we are. It means being humane, humaneness. But it's the global phenomenon. It's not just an African thing that you find in some parts of Africa. Ubuntu, you find it everywhere where you find human beings, because it is inherent to us as human beings. To be humane means to connect to the greater good that we share. So Ubuntu is best understood experientially, meaning that you can't just rationalize about it and have a head knowing. A cognitive recognition of what it is not enough. You have to immerse yourself in it and experience what it's like to really genuinely connect to another for you to appreciate it. This is why you find it anywhere and everywhere. But we see it more where, say, there are natural disasters and how people rally around and support each other. If they're like the California fires, the fires in Australia or in Cape Town, what we've seen, ravaging, really destructive, tragic natural disasters like fires and earthquakes and other things like that, floods, you find that people respond and react because it touches you, it moves you. And in other words, it connects you or to your natural part of wanting to support, or it turns on that microchip in our hearts that knows that we need to be there for others. What Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence says is we need to live with that on a daily basis. Every minute we need to turn that on and keep it on, and not turn it on only when we want something or we need something, or when it's ignited by a moving event that shows tragedy. We need to have that turned on all the time, because we need to connect as human beings beyond where we find ourselves. So Ubuntu, the fragmentation and separation we see across our planet is superficial and human-made, and Ubuntu helps us transcend that. So it, like I said, it's a global phenomenon, and it means we must seek to connect first before we judge, before we label, before we appropriate or place in one or other box. And a big part of Ubuntu says, I can't be fully me if you cannot be fully you. In other words, for me to be fully me, there must be space for you to be fully you. Because when I deny myself, the gifts that come through you, I am less than I could be. And when I deny you the space and opportunity to be fully you, I'm denying everyone else, the rest of humanity, the gifts that come only through you in our uniqueness. So I talk about heart sets, that we have mindsets, but we need heart sets, understanding that we have gifts within every single one of us. Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence says we need to connect to that source of our humaneness, which is the inner knowing that we are connected to each other. Not just via the social media, as neuroscientists have said, that we've multiple neurons that connect us. Right, like right now, I'm sitting in Johannesburg, South Africa. You are wherever you are, and we're talking to each other. And there's a connection. There must be something that you may get one or two things from this today. There's value in that. It's about connection. It's about us understanding that we need to find that interconnection again. So Ubuntu means that I become less than I can fully be. When I inadvertently contribute towards restricting you or others from becoming who you or they can fully become, I steal from humanity when I obstruct you from becoming who you can be. And we can go back to what could be the other things that have limited other people from becoming who they can be. It's taking away, it's not taking away from you. I'm taking something away from myself when I restrict you or somehow prevent you from becoming who you can be. Whether it's an organizational role, it's in community, in society in general, we have a responsibility to humanity to open up spaces for everybody to express their natural inherent gifts that they come with. And these are the values of Mandela. These are the values that you've seen with many other leaders that have impacted the world with their being. And it starts with that respect for humanity that is embodied in the values of Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence. So Ubuntu Intelligence, it is the ability and capacity to constantly recognize our inherent human interconnectedness in everything we do. And it's about living it on an everyday basis without waiting for someone to say, okay, now turn on your Ubuntu. No, it's knowing that that's how we should be, and then living that moment by moment without someone triggering it or having to nudge you to remind us to be humane. It is the ability to live with awareness that everything else is connected, everything else. And life is sustained and enriched through these interconnections, and they're inherent to all of us. Just to tell a quick story, and it's a true story because I lived it. We were driving to one part of the country in the southeastern part called Durban. My family, my wife and our 2 kids. A small boy, he was 3, then 3.5 then, and our daughter was 2 years older than him. And it was around 3-4 a.m. in the morning. Always drive in the morning and arrive at sunrise, which is a stunning view when you get to the ocean at that time in the eastern part of South Africa. And I'm illustrating the example of connection here to something greater. And our kids were sleeping in the back seat with pillows and blankets. And my wife and I were talking about whatever we're talking about. And as we're driving, I'm not sure what it's like in miles per hour, but in kilometers, I was doing about 120 or so kilometers an hour down a very winding road. And the kids were fast asleep. And then our boy, who was, we call him a gifted child, just jumped between the front seats between us, screaming. And what's the first thing you do in that? You slow down. So as I slowed down, right in front of us was a truck that was making a U-turn right in front of the road. If our boy had not jumped in front of us and screamed, we would have been decapitated or something, because we were going to go under the truck, because no one would have survived that at that speed. I have no idea what that is, no explanation that. There are all kinds of explanations, but he has shown us a lot of those examples before what he does. When you're stressed, pressured, or something like that, just come and give you a hug, because he is so connected. Descriptions of him being an empath, being a gifted child in some ways, and other descriptions of that. But that's a real life, true story example of something that happened around understanding that there's a connection to something there that's incredible. But there are other examples of that. Understanding that we human beings have such powerful intel that we're not tapping into anymore, because we live too much in our heads. As you hear that story, what goes on is maybe a dismissive thing like, well, it's just, it's just a coincidence. Yeah, maybe it was. But the thing is, understanding these values of Ubuntu helps us become more than we are without it. So Ubuntu Intelligence requires new mindsets, and especially new heart sets that enable us to see the self in the other, and most importantly, to genuinely connect with empathy and connection with others in a way that we see ourselves in others. So we have a responsibility to ourselves to become more than we are by seeing the connections, the interconnections that we normally would just walk past. So, and this is an interesting proverb I always use in coach training when I do teaching and coaching. If the wise elders of the village don't teach the children, the village idiots will certainly do. No, I didn't say anything about Facebook, but it's about understanding that there are other sources of knowledge and others that will teach you and tell you things. You'll find a lot of useful information on Facebook and other things, and or other platforms. There's Twitter. They say Twitter is a brutal street on Twitter, or social media in general, but not to mention any brands here. Understanding that human beings need to connect, but how do we connect? In the village where there's none of those, there are other ways of connection, in my view, that are more powerful than these other ones that are in many ways superficial and not building on the genuine, authentic interconnections that we see. There are ways to do that. But with Ubuntu, you do not judge any of those. You just say, is it helpful for us to find each other, to work together, to find solutions together to what we need? I was talking a short while ago to a group of African leaders from the African Union and NEPAD, as you see, and I'm sharing the same message around that, saying, if over 80% of Africa's population is below the age of 35, numbers change depending on who is doing the research, who's writing about it. And the point is that in a few years, by 2040, 2050, Africa will have the youngest population on earth. Working age population, I mean. Like the green part that you see on the slide there, that's a youthful population. Average age for Africa now hovers around 19, 20 years. So Africa is still relatively a teenager. And the oldest population in the world's average is around what? The figures tend to be corrected around, but it's over 40 years, over 42, 44, maybe 45. But the oldest average age population of, say, Japan, Germany, and others like that. It's understanding that in other parts of the world, the population is slowed down or even stopped, even negative growth in some areas. But the African population is still growing. What does that say? What do we need to do with that? Because you can't harvest a demographic dividend if you have not invested anything in it. So we need, as in our part of the world, on the African continent, we've got to do more to support this. And I've been saying to many of my counterparts across that we need to ensure that with entrepreneurship values, Ubuntu values, human connection values across this part of the world, which is a rich part of the world in terms of resources, and the largest resource being people, to do that. Because if by 2040, 2050, Africa is the largest working age population in the world, exceeding China and India, what kind of values are being instilled in these young people that will be tomorrow's leaders, and will have the largest number of that? So there is work to be done, and anyone who's a friend of Africa, let's do more to support the continent, to build the leadership that the world will need tomorrow in that. Not just technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, just actual human leadership in that. So, foundations for human connection, I've covered that. How do we greet? I've covered that. I wanted to recap here by saying this so that we see this, so that this lens, when we really see someone, we cannot unsee them. We are one humanity, and we need Ubuntu today more than ever before. So in the East, this is how they greet. And I'm connecting this with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence for us to see that. Oh, sorry, someone maybe was still reading that. Just see that my soul honors your soul. I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides, and I honor the light, love, truth, beauty, and peace within you, because it is also within me. In sharing these things, we are united. We are one. And this is, you find this in India, in the East a lot. It's exact same thing with Sawubona, which in Zulu. And you can put, there are other greetings in other languages that mean exactly the same thing. It's about connecting to each other, finding each other, and seeing ourselves in others. So what are the other qualities we need to build value-adding teams in our organizations? And here I was connecting teams and Ubuntu and Ubuntu Intelligence, saying we need to understand that wherever we are, especially in the organizations we work in, when we build connection, the next level from the individual is the dyad, two-person system. But after that is the team. And within the team, there's maybe the department, division, and then the organization. And then the society where that organization exists, and the rest, and the rest. And I wanted to share something about teams and teaming. It's one of my favorite subjects. But maybe for now, I can leave it as a question and say, how does Ubuntu help? How does Ubuntu Intelligence, as I've shared, how do those help us find ourselves and find each other in that? And we can have a discussion around understanding where we can use Ubuntu. And you can tell me if you find anything useful, any value in that. And if you can, we can have a chat about that. So you can tell me if there is anything there that you find of value. So yeah, that's me for now. We can have the group discussion I wanted to have was how can we use Ubuntu the best way to connect humanity beyond the superficial boundaries that we have created for each other, including age, race, geography, and others. Do you see value for Ubuntu and human consciousness in doing that? Who is moderating? Who's my moderator who wants to come in? Do we and lead a discussion? We can come in and talk and just share. I don't think we need to break into groups because there are not a lot of us. I see your point, Stephanie, about how the fellows can use this. Is very important for fellows to learn the skill of connection, and it's what the world needs, really. Interconnected humans that value connection, genuine connection, not connection only when I need to use you for something. Okay, there's a question from Kristen. It says, what are some practical ways you've coached people or groups to apply this principle? Oh, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant question. And one of them, I do team coaching. I practice and I teach and I coach teams, and I teach coaching. I think there's an organization called WBEX, Global Team Coaching Institute, GTCI. And one of the things we always, or I always work with in that is understanding your location, not only geographically, physically, but in terms of where you are, where you're orienting from. Are you orienting from me, myself, and I, and the individual, and I need to show up and I must win the trophy and myself? Or you're orienting from service and saying, I need to make an impact while I'm here? Because human beings have a short lifespan. If you live up to 70, 80, 90, great. I understand the people that will live up to 200 have already been born, but I don't think it's any one of us. But yeah, good luck if it's you. But yeah, the point of it is, within this time that we've got, how can we make the largest impact? So I coach people to connect to the service that their gifts brought them here. What are you here for? Call it personal vision, life purpose, having a life plan and living it. And many people and many clients and executives that I coach who have just been winging it through life and have some kind of plan in the head about what they want for themselves. And it's amazing when you write it down and say, write down for me what your life is going to be like in 5 years' time. And people struggle with that. So understanding that when I meet people, everyone I meet knows something I don't, and they will teach me something, and I need to be available to receive the lesson. And this is why conscious greeting is so vital. When I greet consciously, I'm saying I'm available for you to share your gifts with me, and for me to share my gifts, and for you to receive my gifts. I'm available for that. And this is where we need to understand the deeper meaning of presence. We think it's about it's not just the physical presence, yes, but it's deeper than that. And it's deeper than the one that we always describe, the presence, meaning being fully available in service of another in the moment. It's got to be deeper than that. It's what I've called in one piece that I wrote called intense empathy. So I just put a word called intempathy. Intense empathy, meaning beyond putting yourself in the shoes of another, but actually immersing yourself in their life for that moment to walk with them in such a way that they don't feel alone. And we've seen that with people that have been impacted by serious illness and recovering, that they needed to feel the presence of others. Intempathy helps with that. It's beyond toxic empathy. It's not that. It's genuine positive availability of another to lean on as I walk through something major in my life. That's intempathy. And I wrote up the definition. Maybe it will end up in some dictionary sometime. But for now, it's understanding that it starts with genuine connection. And we need each other. We need to connect consciously with everybody else. So I coach from that point of view, Kristen, of saying that, especially for leaders, they need to see themselves in their people. As a leader, you're modeling leadership behaviors that you want your people to exhibit. But are you exhibiting them yourself, or they're sitting in your head and you're really not showing up with those leadership attributes and qualities that you talk about, but you don't exhibit or demonstrate? So I love coaching leaders, because it's really, they're leaders that are just positional leaders, and they may not have the stuff that they need to have for them to show up as leaders. And then there are leaders that really leave that and need to actually show more of that and hold back, because they don't want their light to blind their followers, yet their followers are still in the dark. Any other questions? Cheryl, yeah, this one about what you're discussing this morning, that we need to see the whole person and not just the professional face. Absolutely. Ubuntu recognizes this and is meant to include our full selves. Absolutely spot on, Cheryl. It's exactly that. It's about seeing that we have each other, and we need to find each other after we've seen each other. I'm sure it makes sense, Cheryl. So how would you promote the Ubuntu approach in communities that focus so much on individualism? Yeah, for all my 25 to 30 years of experience in the work environment, I've been teaching in different universities. I still do, and I supervise masters and doctoral students. And one of the things that I teach is on the value of Ubuntu values in building connected communities or resonant communities, whether it's in organizations or whatever organization or shared space there is. So promote Ubuntu by challenging people to find something they can relate to in the person that they feel there is too different from them, that they feel they can't find anything common. They would rather leave that person alone. Most times is things that we have not seen that person. That's how it's easy for us to see certain things and put them aside, as in, I have nothing in common with this person. You can relate to most people. Yeah, there are others that have it's closed up. You can't really do that. But Cheryl, it's an important point to promote Ubuntu approach in communities that focus on individualism. You start by asking the question, what are the shared values that we have as in that community where it's focused on individualism? You heighten areas of collaboration. That's one of the first things. What are the areas where we need to collaborate? And then you ask people questions like, where do you need support the most? And then follow it up with, who do you think can provide that support? And how can you approach them safely for them to provide that support? And then the real rub comes in when you ask them, where can you provide service to others? And where are you available to be supportive to whom and through what exactly? Or you can shift it around and say, what are the gifts you have that your community needs from you right now? I find that's always absolutely fascinating. People are like, I didn't think of that. Like, yeah, what gifts do you have? People normally focus on the external part of skills, competencies, and that. Yeah, those are useful, but it's amazing when you work with gifts, because gifts are more nuanced. So what gifts? So Cheryl, I would say, what gifts does this individual or these individually focused people have that others need for them or in their community? I do a lot of this with working with teams, for teams to find each other, because there's mutual accountability. You're responsible for everyone's performance and everyone's well-being as a team, and you hold each other to account. And these are skills we need in life in general, not just in organizational teams that we work with. Great question again, Cheryl. You promote the shared spaces and the talents and gifts that come through. Any other questions? Anyone else? Thanks, Kathleen. Any other questions that you may have? Feel free. We still have a bit of time, so I'll answer any questions you have. Just type it up in chat. I thought there would be space for people to come on and speak. I don't think it's there. What other questions do you have? I'm happy to answer some more. I'm here. Anything on Ubuntu Intelligence or Ubuntu Coaching is an interesting part that I work with. Oh, by the way, they didn't tell you this, but anyone who asks a very interesting question, I'll offer you 6 free Ubuntu coaching sessions, and we can talk about that. See who has asked very interesting questions that will get that. If you like it, you can take it, or you can give it to somebody else. How would you promote this principle in primarily virtual coaching fellowship spaces? Yes, absolutely. I'm already doing that, by the way. A lot of my work now in the last 2 years is virtual. And I run classes, I run webinars on that. Just ran one webinar just 2 hours before this call with over 80 people across the African continent, leaders, young leaders. And we're doing that, talking about this subject of Ubuntu Intelligence, and how to build genuine, authentic connections. So it goes beyond just promoting the principles. It's about living them and demonstrating them in how you can actually do that, and giving life to them, giving expression to them in everything we do. I was in Abuja, Nigeria last week, running sessions and workshops there, and I made a presentation on something similar. And what emerged from that is that people could relate to it, and we're giving examples of where this was happening. And I realized I've always known that, so I say it's better understood experientially, is that many people leave these values, have them within them, but there is a dominant paradigm or narrative that they prefer to exhibit in their behaviors and how they engage in that, and suppress that part, because in the business environment, it's looked upon as either weakness or being soft, or being less, what's the word? Rigorous. I'm looking for an English word that means being hard, decisive, matter of fact, and that. that you're considering too much, you're being sensitive, you're considering too much the interests and views of others. And there's different leadership styles for that. And you're being too democratic in your leadership. You need to be more commanding and more decisive and more pace-setting type leadership, where it's about, let's go get them. It's about winning and achieving and leaving blood on the floor, then yay, achieved. And we're trying to say the world needs a different approach to that. We've seen what that achieves. And I think workspaces or shared spaces where our fellows operate, it need to be spaces where everyone can express their gifts and find expression to their talents and gifts, and then create spaces for others to do that. We can do that without really wounding anyone emotionally, psychologically, or in many other ways. So it's very, very important to do that. And I find that it doesn't diminish you to do that. It actually enriches you. So I want you to know if you can tell me when I have about 5 or 10 minutes, because I want to give you a gift of what I call 7 SRQs, which are 7 self-reflection questions that everyone needs to do for themselves at least twice a year to help center us and keep us on track towards becoming Ubuntu intelligent, really. Dita's question above is what I'm trying to get at. Dita asked, thanks Dita, was Dita, yeah? When you are connecting with others virtually, is there a limit where you feel the effectiveness of connection diminishes? Love that. Thank you for that. Yeah, we're discussing that. One of my classes at the University of Stellenbosch is a master's, an MPhil, master's in management coaching, where I teach, and we're talking about that. And the word was, what are the parameters? What are the limits? What are the boundaries within that? So Dita asked, when you're connecting with others virtually, is there a limit where you feel the effectiveness connection? It's really about your take. What I've seen more is that it actually depends. There's almost an inner knowing where the one is that becomes as deep as when you meet, when you have engaged in person with others. And what I see is that the frequency of engagement normally diminishes the intensity of the engagement. I hope you get what I'm saying. The frequency of engagement, if you're talking regularly, once, twice a day or a week or whatever, that impacts the intensity of the engagement, where you can describe it as diminished, but in many cases it's not diminished, because it's the work that's been happening. When you connect, it's like you've always been in touch, and that is when you realize the connection is very solid, it's strong. It's like saying your cell phone network connection does not get reduced because you didn't make too many calls. It stays the same. We get to that level. I hope that example is enough for that. Thank you, Dita, for that question. Kristen, what advice do you have in shifting or rebalancing organizational culture? Oh, my favorite topic, organizational culture, Kristen. How much time do you have? Where resource constraints may drive a sense of urgency and more transactional approaches versus slowing down and connecting. Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah. And many times organizational cultures shape the depth and intensity of connection that you find in many organizations. And what we've seen is that, and some research that we've done, I'm currently just revising a copy of my book on Ubuntu Intelligence, Ubuntu. And this, I deal with this exactly. So I'm so fascinated by a question, Kristen, because it speaks to my heart. Organizational cultures. We need to change how organizations have been involved in organizational cultures. Organizations are living organisms, and we injure them and hurt them with performance management systems that bring toxicity into it. I always make example of we give them too much sugar and salt, and they become unhealthy, and that is because we spice them up with performance-driven approaches that you must do this and this and this and that. Performance measurement indices need to be changed to infuse them more with collaboration and cooperation more. And then you take away a lot of the toxicity and the silos and other things that think about me, myself, and I. And this is how you can do that. And I find that Ubuntu Intelligence and Ubuntu, infusing organizational cultures with Ubuntu and emotional intelligence, the Daniel Goleman type, and that it works very, very well together. Social intelligence, cultural intelligence, and that. And now they talk about diversity and inclusion in Intel, being aware of how the world is, and not playing according to the dominant narrative of the highest performer had the largest number of sales. Who helped them actually bring those in? How do you value them into that? Along the value chain of any performance, there's someone else who did something that may not be appreciated as much as the one driving it that's upfront. But the part about resource constraints is a very important one, and we work with that a lot, that sometimes the resources that are needed are just spaces for people to engage, and you open up more channels for more resources, but it becomes an issue. And the sense of agency that we see, or performance target-driven behaviors, can become very, very quickly toxic, where it's about, you've got to meet the targets, you've got to deliver, and that's what leaves blood on the floor, or that breaks relationships. It's only about those targets. And this is why we need to change organizational cultures to value human engagement and collaboration. And in team coaching, Kristen, we call it, we're shifting from high performance driven work to value creation work. So instead of high performance, think value creation. And that will start to influence the organizational culture towards co-creating value than high performance driven at any cost. And that, in a long way, try to answer your question on that. It's a very, very important question. Kristen, I'm not sure if your question is fully answered. I feel like I need to say more on that, but yeah. Yeah. Cheryl wants to know when the book will be published. I've got friends, people I know at RX, I'll let you know. And the rest of the fellows and fellowship. Yeah, the book is, I'm looking at March, April next year, Cheryl. And I think if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll find that I will have it there on that. Okay, Yawa, this is about framing living organisms. Yes. Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you, Al, for that comment. Christian. All right. And if anyone has any other questions, I'm here to take more. Let's talk. Let's engage. I'm gonna find my and put my what do you call it again? Profile. That's on LinkedIn, and put it maybe put it here, and let's see, I can find it and put it in the chat. But yeah, if you have any more questions, please feel free to check in and ask. Oh, Yawa, nice question. I used to work for the United Nations before, and I'm currently working with the multilateral agencies, the African Union, NEPAD. As you can see in my slides, you've seen the logo for NEPAD. I've shared some of that with them. But yes, how do you think the Ubuntu concept applies to donor and grant agencies? We always believe that you know, the whole philanthropy business is, you could say, some of those organizations have the values that build on Ubuntu values about service to humanity. This is why you'll have the donor world for me is it can be seen as a vehicle for promoting service to the greater good. And there are others, of course, there are different schools of thought around the so-called donor world. But Yawa, I think that donor world grantees, for me, they're doing incredibly amazing work. I work with a number of foundations around the world and other agencies that do incredible work, where you find not many organizations or others want to put something in it. And donors and grants from different entities is the lifeblood of communities. So power dynamics often skew those types of relationships. Absolutely. It's for me, the donor world and the grants and others should not have conditions. Otherwise, they lose the shine or quality of being donors and grants. And in my work, I always say that for people to really gain human agency, they need to, it needs to be more of teaching people how to fish and not giving them fish. Sometimes, though, someone is too hungry to even go fishing. Maybe then give them a fish and then let them go and do that. And go fishing after they've had something. That's where we need donors and grants and others, but we need to create conditions where people can be themselves and not have crutches and wheelchairs with respect. And they need to learn to move again on their own. It's a controversial subject, and the simple part of it is that we do need the places in the world where support is needed, but we should not make it permanent. It's just my view, my honest view on that. It doesn't grow people to always prop them up. Birds know this. Animals know this. What do they say with birds? When it gets to a certain stage of the little fledgling bird, the mother or adult in that just pushes it off the nest and say, okay, if you don't open your wings and fly, you're gonna land on the ground, you're gonna die, or some prey is gonna munch on you for lunch. So get off the nest, fly, go. Human beings, what do we do? I'm 40 and I'm still staying with my parents. That's okay. Yeah, I'll get into trouble if I go on with this discussion. So I'll stop right there. So yeah, Yawa, yeah. Thank you very much for that. Right. Yawa, if you can find my link on LinkedIn and just pop it in the chat, I would really appreciate that. Thank you, those that have been able to find it. Yeah, please click on the feedback form link below the screen to give your feedback on this session. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for the time shared and for the questions asked. Thanks for engaging. Really appreciate it. Now, do I have time to share the questions, these 7 SROQs? Do I have time to do that? Can I do that quickly? Yes. Yeah. Can you share the 7? Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, you tell me, Kristen, when I'm out of time. I'm going to do this very quickly. They're called the 7 SROQs. So number 1, who am I? Beyond so the question is, number 1, who am I? Beyond the roles I play in my organization, in my family, in society, who am I? If you take all that away, what's left? Who am I? That's number 1. Number 2, where am I? Along my life's journey, maybe I took detours, maybe, where am I along my life's journey? And be honest with that. Number 3, we sometimes call it the anchor question in coaching. Where am I going? Where am I going? Do I know where I'm going? Oh, okay, I'm just going to find out when I get there. Where am I going? Sometimes we call it vision question, purpose question, values, and the rest of that. Number 4, how will I know I'm there? There, where I'm going. How will I know I'm there? Number 5, what are my life's milestones and achievements? What are my life's milestones and achievements? And number 6, what is my support system? I like gardening, by the way. That's mine. I love gardening. It's my mindfulness, my meditation space. I do gardening. I've got lots of vegetables right now in my garden. I love it. And then taking walks and the ocean or the bush where it's wilderness only. I love that, in the woods, in the forest, and peace with the birds singing. I love that kind. I love nature. So it's my support system. In reading and writing, talking, coaching. Yeah. Number 7, the last one of SRQs is, what is my service to humanity? In brackets, legacy, and the rest of that. What is my service to humanity? What will I be remembered for? If I were to leave now, today, what's going to be left of me? What impact will I have made? So these are the 7 SRQs. And when you answer them correctly, honestly to yourself, they can make a massive shift. And I believe every fellow needs to answer these for themselves. I can run some sessions on them, more detailed, 1-hour session with a group. Happy to do that if you need me to run them. There's detail behind each one of them. There's a whole chapter. And in my book, I detail them in greater detail and give case studies of people that have answered that. It's a fascinating one. So number 1 is, who am I? As in, who am I? Look in the mirror, who am I? Number 2, where am I? Number 3, where am I going? 4, how will I know I'm there? 5, what are my life's milestones and achievements? 6, what's my support system? 7, what's my service to humanity? Right. Spot on, Cheryl. I get that a lot with these. So simple, yet so profound. They're not easy, by the way. It looks easy to answer them. It's not. And you really go deep, it can be very emotional. We had groups run those sessions where we got to stop the session and bring out the Kleenex. So be honest with them, with yourself and that. So I'm not sure whom I'm supposed to talk to. Kristen, Cheryl, or are we done? Because I'm done. I'm very happy with that. And thank you very much, everybody.